The director didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Dead weight. The word landed cleanly across the open office floor. Not shouted, not whispered, just spoken loudly enough that every conversation nearby slowed to a halt. People pretended to keep typing. Someone dropped a pen. A chair rolled softly against the carpet. I stood beside my desk, holding the folder she had just handed back to me. She crossed her arms and looked around the room like a teacher addressing a class. "I don't tolerate people who can't keep up," she said. "You have 1 hour to clear your desk." No one looked at me directly. The director, Caroline, rested one hand on the back of a chair and watched my reaction with something close to curiosity. Not anger, not frustration. Expectation. She was waiting to see how humiliation would look on my face. I nodded once. Understood. That seemed to disappoint her slightly. I sat down and opened the top drawer of my desk. The office returned to its uneasy rhythm. Keyboards resumed. Phones rang again. But the air still carried the faint tension of an audience pretending it had missed the performance. The first thing I packed was a notebook. It was worn along the edges, filled with small observations, things I'd been writing down for months. Patterns in workflow. Repeated complaints from staff. Quiet inefficiencies that never made it into official reports. When I had started here 8 months earlier, no one had paid attention to the new mid-level operations assistant. That had been the point. Caroline walked past my desk again, slowly. She stopped near the printer, close enough that I could feel her presence lingering behind me. "Make sure you're done within the hour," she said. I nodded again without turning around. My coworkers avoided eye contact. Not out of cruelty. Out of self-preservation. I placed a small desk plant into a cardboard box. Someone from accounting had given it to me 3 months earlier, after I'd stayed late helping reconcile a system issue. The plant had survived. That seemed like a quiet accomplishment. Across the room, 2 junior analysts whispered to each other. One of them glanced at me and quickly looked away when our eyes almost met. The truth was, none of this surprised me. Over the past several months, I had watched Caroline operate like this. Sharp corrections, public pressure, quick decisions that left little room for disagreement. From the executive floor, her department's productivity reports had looked impressive. From this desk, the view was different. I had seen good employees stop speaking during meetings. I had watched 2 experienced project managers quietly resign within weeks of each other. People adapted by shrinking. Silence became a survival strategy. I placed my coffee mug into the box. It still had a thin line of coffee at the bottom from earlier that morning. Caroline was standing near the glass conference room now, talking to someone while still keeping half an eye on me. It wasn't supervision. It was anticipation. She expected something. Anger, embarrassment, maybe a confrontation that would justify the scene she'd already created. Instead, I kept packing. Stapler, charger cables. The framed photo of a coastline I had picked up years ago on a trip that had nothing to do with this job. Each item carried a quiet memory of time spent here. Not wasted time, observed time. I checked the clock. 42 minutes had passed. When the box was full, I closed the lid and stood up. Caroline approached again. "Finished already?" "Yes." She tilted her head slightly, studying me. "I hope you take this as a learning experience." "I will." For the first time, she seemed slightly unsettled by how little resistance she'd encountered. People like Caroline expected conflict. It confirmed their sense of control. Calm often confused them. I picked up the box. No one stopped me as I walked toward the elevator. A few coworkers looked up briefly. One gave a faint nod that carried more apology than support. The elevator doors closed. And just like that, I left the building as an employee. 2. That evening I sat at a very different desk. The city looked smaller from 30 floors up. The office was quiet except for the low hum of the building's ventilation system. On the table in front of me were the documents that didn't exist in the downstairs office. Ownership records. Board meeting notes. internal culture reports compiled over the past year. When I had inherited the company from my father 3 years earlier, I had been warned about distance. How executives often lost sight of the daily reality inside their own organizations, so I had chosen something unconventional. I applied for a mid-level role under a shortened version of my name. Only the board knew. From that position, I had watched the company the way most employees experienced it. Not through charts. Through behavior. And Caroline's department had stood out: strong numbers, high turnover, repeated internal complaints that never fully reached senior leadership. Yesterday's scene had simply clarified what the reports suggested. Not a single employee had intervened. Not because they agreed. Because they didn't feel safe. I closed the file in front of me. The board had already reviewed the findings weeks earlier. But seeing it myself, feeling it firsthand, had changed the weight of the decision. The meeting announcement went out late that night. Mandatory company-wide gathering, 9:00 a.m. By morning, the office buzzed with speculation. I arrived through the executive entrance. From the boardroom windows, I could see employees gathering in the main conference hall downstairs. Caroline stood near the front of the room, speaking confidently with a group of department heads. She looked composed, certain. To her, this was just another meeting. When the board chair entered the room, conversations faded. Then he gestured toward me. The moment stretched longer than expected. Recognition moved slowly across the room like a ripple. People who had worked beside me for months suddenly tried to reconcile the quiet operations assistant with the person now standing beside the executive board. Caroline's expression changed last, not dramatically, just a brief pause in her breathing. The board chair spoke first, introducing me by my full name: owner, CEO. No one looked at Caroline, but the awareness in the room shifted toward her anyway. I stepped forward. Yesterday's moment never came up. I didn't repeat her words. Instead, I spoke about workplace culture, about leadership responsibility, about how performance metrics sometimes hid deeper problems. Slides appeared behind me: turnover numbers, internal feedback summaries, retention comparisons between departments. Patterns became visible. No accusation was necessary. Finally, the board chair returned to the microphone. Effective immediately, Caroline's department would undergo formal leadership review. Until then, interim oversight would be assigned. The room stayed very quiet. Not shocked, just absorbing. I looked across the audience. Some faces carried relief. Others carried discomfort. Caroline sat perfectly still. For a moment our eyes met. There was no anger there. Mostly realization. The meeting ended without applause. People left slowly. I remained near the front of the room, speaking quietly with the board. Through the glass wall I could see employees returning to their desks. The same desks where silence had once felt necessary. Restoring dignity to a workplace wasn't dramatic. It was slow. But at least now, it had started.